Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed speakers, dear friends and members of ARRP. Welcome to the second edition of the Romanian Public Relations Association Regional Summit. We're thrilled to have gathered here today, uniting some of the brightest minds dedicated to shaping the future of public relations in our region. Last year, we embarked on a transformative journey, coming together as a united community of professionals committed to upholding transparency, ethics, and integrity in the face of the challenges our field faces. I'd like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to the four national professional associations that signed the Memorandum of Collaboration after our inaugural summit in 2023. This year, we expect to extend the engagement with associations from Croatia, Hungary, and Poland. Your support and commitment are extremely important to us. As outlined in the memorandum, we remain steadfast in our shared goals, fostering collaboration across the region and developing professional norms that communicators can adhere to in their work. Secondly, providing support, whether through human resources or expertise, to national associations as they can confront anti-democratic and exclusionary discourses in their countries. And sharing knowledge and best practices in crisis management to combat the spread of disinformation. On a national level, we're going to start discussions with the Ministry of Education to explore ways to amend the curricula for future communicators and PR professionals, with the goal of incorporating new disciplines that will equip students to confront fake news and disinformation head-on. This year, we have chosen to continue exploring the pressing issue of fake news, recognizing the critical role that public relations and communication play in addressing this challenge. The theme remains highly relevant, especially considering the elections held globally this year and the growing influence of artificial intelligence on communication tools. Romania has to vote in next weeks in general and presidential elections. Thus, we are daily fed with disinformation and misinformation. Throughout our discussions, we will examine the impact of PR on key areas such as geopolitics, elections, and corporate decision-making in today's rapidly evolving landscape. Most importantly, we aim to discuss how to keep public relations relevant in an area dominated by technology and impersonal communication. I'd like to welcome distinguished speakers, each a leader in their field and a strong advocate for ethics in public relations. We are truly privileged to have them with us today. A special welcome to the representatives of the national PR associations from countries across our region. Your presence here underscores the importance of our shared commitment. As many of you are aware, the European Union has already taken significant steps to address fake news and foreign interference, particularly in the context of electoral processes. However, despite significant legislative advances, there remains a gap in awareness, especially among PR professionals here in Romania. It is likely that part of our responsibility as Romanian association is to simplify these complex regulations, translating them into accessible principles and clear, actionable recommendations. By doing so, we can guide the local PR industry in effectively addressing challenges related to fake news. Thank you very much. And now I would like to pass the microphone to Mr. Gabriel Păslaru, former president of the Romanian Association, who will expertly guide us through today's topics and panel discussions with precision and competence. Thank you, Gabi.
Thank you, Viorica. Nice meeting you, distinguished invited guests. I'm very happy to be surrounded by the large family of PR communicators in Romania. My task is relatively easy. Introduce one by one each of these distinguished guests. And since there is so much merit gathered here, I will be reading most of the text in order not to leave aside any of the merit. Hello, Patrick. You're the first to come. Patrick Pennings is the head of Digital Development and Governance Department, Directorate General Human Rights and Rule of Law, Directorate of Security, Integrity and Rule of Law, Council of Europe. His presentation title is Geopolitical Challenges, Generative AI and Disinformation in a Year of Elections. The Impact of AI-Driven Disinformation of Elections and Global Conflicts. But first of all, a couple of extra words about Patrick. He has spent the last 30 years at the Council of Europe, focusing on transformation processes in the organization, developing partnerships with other international organizations and national partners. Currently, heading the Information Society Department under Directorate General Human Rights and the Rule of Law, Patrick coordinates standard setting and cooperation activities in the fields of media, internet governance, data protection, and cybercrime. He is also responsible for projects related to public-private partnership and cooperation with business partners. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope I will not get too much interrupted, but because I see my connection is a little bit unstable. I'm actually speaking from the Council of Europe headquarters in Strasbourg, but I can already say that my colleagues in Bucharest, because in Bucharest we have our cybercrime office, are also very much interested in what you are doing and how we in the future may be able to cooperate, especially when it comes to combating disinformation, when it comes to combating cybercrime through disinformation or disinformation through cybercrime. I will share with you a PowerPoint presentation about those geopolitical challenges, and I hope that with that we can go through those in order to have a very clear picture of what I will be talking about. Now, I'll first have to see how to ensure that you get the full picture. Here you go. So geopolitical challenges, but also generative AI and disinformation in a year of elections. That is a very crucial topic for the Council of Europe for the very simple reason that right now, only a couple of weeks ago, we signed the first global convention on artificial intelligence together with a number of countries such as the United States, but also Israel, and quite a number of countries around the world have been actively participating in elaborating that, and I can come back to that a little bit later if you like. Now, what we have seen is that right now generative AI is playing a crucial role, not only in disinformation, but also in spreading all kinds of informations, whether that is malinformation, whether that is correct information as well. And we would like to see how the AI and the disinformation has played a role and plays a role in European and US election. We also have to pay a particular attention to the disinformation in the war in Ukraine and in the Middle East. Let's not distinguish what is happening there. The same mechanisms are actually in place, and we need to look at how can we counter that. and what are then the future implications and possible conclusions. So generative AI and disinformation in elections, we've seen that AI's role in transforming and
We cannot hear you right now. Can you hear
is
us?
transforming. Why is that so? Because, yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me or not? Sorry
now,
about this.
Now we can.
Okay, I'm sorry. There seems to be a connection problem in some way. So what we are seeing is that the forthcoming of generative AI has spread disinformation much more rapidly and much more widely than it has ever done in the past. It's also because generative AI allows us to construct a tale, construct a story from scratch, using materials that are out there. And that means that we are constantly face the threat of deep fakes and AI-generated content also in democratic processes. And quite a number of our politicians are already actively using those tools. When, for example, we see that in the United States, a major contributor to the generative AI and also to the social media landscape will now become part of the governing mechanism, we can already think about what the possible consequences of such an involvement may be. We see that disinformation campaigns, they target specific issues, that they target minority issues, they target immigration, they target economic issues, and they will be able to focus their attention to those publics, target publics, micro-targeting them with information and disinformation about very specific topics. Now, the thing is that in a number of countries, disinformation is part of the freedom of expression landscape. So in that sense, cannot be in itself, unless they are explicitly illegal, cannot be targeted as such into legal action. AI-generated deepfakes are therefore used also to discredit political candidates. And that is something that maybe we will see less in some of the European Union countries, but that definitely is being used in quite a number of Council of Europe member states. AI and disinformation in the US elections, we see that the use of AI-generated bots to manipulate public sentiment are being actively used. When we see the creation of those bots, which are actually fake addresses and fake websites, which include the possibility and is to a much larger extent than the creation of individual websites and individual accounts of specific people, but they are AI-generated bots. AI-generated, and the statistics about this show that about 2/3 of those bots are influencing actively elections. And with, as a consequence, a heightened polarization amplified by this AI-driven disinformation. We see the same thing happening in the Ukraine war. We very often, let's say, the deliberate aggression of the Russian Federation to Ukraine uses this hybrid warfare, creating fake videos and manipulating narratives. I'm not saying this is all one-sided. It can come from the different angles. Cyber warfare and AI-driven bots targeting domestic and international audiences are part of the war game that we are currently seeing. The same goes for the Middle East, where AI-driven disinformation targeting military actions, human rights abuses, and political events target publics which are highly sensitive to that, highly sensitized to the cause of Palestinian nation, for example, or vice versa, that are supporting the narrative of the Israeli government. manipulation of public sentiment, exacerbating ethnic and religious tensions is a mere consequence of the use of those disinformation tools. How do we counter this now? There are, of course, and the chair, Viorica, and also Gabi already mentioned that within the EU, there are already a number of regulatory measures that are being implemented, such as the EU Digital Services Act, but also to establish fact-checking and to establish AI tools to use and detect disinformation. I think that is crucial, that we do not only are subject to that disinformation, but that we can also use AI tools to counter that disinformation, to detect the disinformation and to counter it. And especially also our role in public awareness and media literacy as crucial defenses. I'm right now dealing and working with senior citizens, and I can tell you that it's incredibly important also to increase media literacy as a crucial defense mechanism in order to be able to analyze the situation. The takeaways in that where we examine the implications of this electoral advertising on the internet, the spending, the questionable advertising, the micro-targeting that is being done in the course of the elections, where our concerns are really to create free and fair elections, where fairness and legitimacy of the electoral goals are being upheld. And the current regulatory framework is there, but it needs to be implemented. And we need further tools in order to implement them at European level, but especially also at national and local level. We therefore have recommended a number of things, like for example, on fact-checking, but also on the platform design. How can we, in the design of a platform, ensure that they are done in a human rights, transparent and compliant matter, where moderation is being done, where how we ensure that the correct prioritization of content is being done, how there is proportionality in in the election system, and so on and so forth, with a number of recommendations that are clearly targeted towards empowering the public that we have to work with. What are then the future implications? And the conclusion of this is that we have, within this AI-driven disinformation that poses ongoing risks to democracy, to conflict zones, we have to be extremely aware of what is happening. I don't have the time to give you very specific examples right now, but we could, and that's what we're doing through our different programs, including with our cybercrime programs, for example, in Ukraine, that we need to be able to cooperate as institutions, not only between governments, but also with tech companies, with PR industry and civil society as a whole, in order to be able to have a joint effort and a joint response to those challenges. Thank you very much for your understanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick. You have spoken about polarization. May I ask you, what do you think growing distrust of information as well as media and governments as sources will deepen polarized views that could trigger civil unrest?
What we see as a very specific example there is that we've seen that already in previous election results, what this can cause. That is that certain forces are there only focused on polarization of society. Some countries are more exempt of it, But the issues that we have seen, for example, most recently in the US elections, but also that we have seen in the Austrian elections, are primarily targeting to creating this polarization. That the issues of the viability of the measures that are being proposed are no longer the center of the discussions, but it's the polarized positions that create a sentiment of being in a society that is ungovernable. And there you really have to look at where are the forces, what are the forces that are into place in order to create this destabilization of our societies, and who benefits. I think the question that we need to ask ourselves is who benefits from that. And with the PR industry, if we want to work on ethics in public relations, I think one of the key questions that we have to ask ourselves is also to which extent within this context, what can be our positive role in order to support a balanced dialogue in society that respects the key values that we stand for, whether that be human rights, rule of law, or our pluralist democracy. Thank you.
Thank you too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. And now it's time to hand the floor to the next speaker. And this is a lady, a Romanian lady, Dorina Năstase. She's a coordinator, Strategic Communication Task Force, European Commission, at the European Commission's Directorate General for Communication. A significant part of her activity is tackling disinformation, including resilience building and protecting information integrity, key areas of focus of the European Commission. She works on crafting EU-wide strategic communication strategies to reduce the impact of misleading narratives and campaigns and strengthen the public trust in institutions. Ms. Năstase has also been part of initiatives that promote media and digital literacy and critical thinking, equipping journalists and citizens with tools to discern truthful information. Dorina Năstase regularly participates in EU-hosted events, sharing her expertise on strategic communication at European level. Please, Ms. Năstase, give us your knowledge. Share it with us.
Thank you for the invitation. I hope you hear me, and the connection from Brussels is better than from Strasbourg. We cannot compete with Bucharest, I know, or with Romania in general, but here sometimes the internet connection can be tricky. I'm gonna make some points connected to our current work and maybe with some past events in European elections and recent elections that we have seen through the area, and with a bit of opening on the next commission that we will hopefully have soon if hearings in Strasbourg will go well. So we prefer to use lately more the term of information integrity because it's wider, and we believe that it gives better the feeling of the focus of our thinking lately. Also, I would like to thank you for the invitation because it's rather rare that I have the chance to reconnect with my home country. So this is a welcome opportunity and quite timely ahead of elections locally. I don't have to repeat, and the previous speaker from the Council of Europe already referred to the international troubled environment. At the same time in geopolitical terms, but also technologically wise. So in this context, for us, it's essential to work on the resilience of our democracy, which are continuously being tested and challenged. And you have seen we had concerns concerning European elections, but fortunately we have been apparently quite well prepared. There were no lasting campaigns or types of interventions that were large enough to harm the result. However, the situation was a bit more troubled in neighboring Moldova and Georgia, as you could see recently. And of course, we have some crisis points which continue. Everything that's connected to the war against Ukraine, the Middle East, and some thematic policies that affect the European Union. Of course, migration, the Green Deal that is rebranded lately, and everything around it. You saw the wave of disinformation around floods in Spain, and we expect such a wave to continue in a matter that will follow, of course, the opportunity to create polarization, because this is what such actors are looking for. You know that it has become even more aggressive due to technological advances, but it is also part of a continuum ranging from milder forms to hybrid threats sometimes. You have seen also the incidents in France, I guess around European elections and a bit before, with the fake coffins brought under the Tour Eiffel, and tags on the walls in French cities, and everything that could create societal polarization, cyber attacks that were timed with the elections timeline to seem more important than they were really there. But we were lucky. It could have been worse probably, and also our institutions were prepared to deal with the threats. You already know, thanks to the previous speaker, the legal framework, which is already in place, and some upcoming legal framework. I will just briefly touch upon it. The Digital Services Act is in force for a short time period, so it's still under testing. We will have the AI Act in place next year only, and it will bring about some new improvements, we hope so, in tagging AI-generated videos online. The major platforms have agreed to work together with the Commission on it, so we have some hopes that the situation will improve in that area as well. And as in all technological advances, AI can be a problem, but can be an opportunity as well. And as this is one of the major lines of work in what we do, we are trying to work more on active communication and on explaining what we do in order to leave as little space as possible to disinformation. So we think also that it's better to prevent than to respond to disinformation. So pre-banking, myth-busting, and a close cooperation with the civil society, journalistic associations, and generally media literacy and digital literacy programs are way more efficient than a dialogue with those who promote disinformation and all forms around it, including beyond going to cyber attacks or hybrid threats. Also, of course, not giving space to working on our own vulnerabilities will help us get better, strengthening our societies, preventing the misuse of online platforms, and protecting journalists and media pluralism. This is all connected with what we will be working on from the next college on, which is mentioned by our Commission President, the European Defence Shield. which aims at connecting and putting together all initiatives that have been contributing to this goal in the previous commission, but also taking them further. We already worked on strengthening platforms' responsibility, and now the code of practice, which was voluntary, will become a code of conduct under the DSA soon. We are also working closely with the defense network. You probably have seen news of the report drafted by former president of Finland, Sauli Niinisto, and these are very close connected tracks. There is an important part in that report, which is referring to resilience to disinformation, foreign interference campaigns, cyber campaigns, and hybrid threats. You heard probably quite enough about the Eurobarometer and the way European citizens are seeing this. There is a high percentage of Europeans who worry about the spread of disinformation. But at the same time, quite a lot of them believe they are able to detect it, which we find a little bit risky, and maybe we should do more studies in that area, because even experts have trouble identifying lately AI-generated videos, not to speak about audio. But as we have only started to using the Eurobarometer in this area, there is space for more research. This kind of surveys give us hope that there is enough awareness in the European public about the situation. You already heard what are the issues which are more targeted. We are trying to prepare the next commission, also concerning a gap analysis of what we have been doing, and we have collected such analysis from various member states. So anything that you can share and alert us with will be most useful, because it will inform our thinking and preparedness for the next college and the work that we will do in the near future. Maybe the last point would be to sum up. I would like to underline that the EU is taking a whole of society approach. So this is not a task only for the institutions. It's not only a legal matter. It's something that has to have the citizen at its center. So we are trying to empower European citizens also when they are present and active on social media platforms, when they are consuming media in any form and shape, to look at it with a critical eye, and to be aware what are the types of risks that they can encounter. We have been working on a new web page, bringing together all the resources that we have in this area, including handbooks for teachers and videos for young voters for European elections, but of course they can be adapted and used for any elections, underlining a few of the methods that are the most frequently used by the disinformation actors and by disinformation campaigns. I'm going to share it with you separately. I wasn't sure I'm able to share a PowerPoint presentation via Zoom, which we rarely use, but these we all have for other purposes and platforms. So thank you again for the invitation, and I hope we stay in touch and work together on projects for the future.
Gabi, you should unmute you.
Very good piece of advice. Thank you. So before we say goodbye, I'd like to understand if you're optimistic or pessimistic about this. Do you think that a growing mistrust in information and in media and governments as sources will deepen, or maybe not? And would this lead to polarized views, which could trigger civil unrest, possibly confrontation? It's not an easy question, I must admit.
Yes, it's not an easy question. And I think this is why our president chose such a wide umbrella for the work that we are going to do for the near future, because we have to go at the root of the problem and also solution. It's the state of our democracies and vulnerabilities that we have that enable such actors. If we don't leave space for that, if we work on our own vulnerabilities, if we are prepared, then probably the success of such campaigns or types of negative interventions will be way less. But indeed, it's not an easy thing to do, because it's not something that you can solve with a legal document. It requires cooperation, networking, and a real analysis of the problem to be able to solve it.
Okay. Thank you, Darina.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, the next speaker is a lady too, Alina Dole, a Romanian as well. And she's associate professor in strategic communication and public diplomacy at Bournemouth University Faculty of Media and Communication. She holds a PhD in communication sciences, and her research is situated at the intersection between public diplomacy, nation branding, migration, media, and communication studies, with a focus on discourse. She's particularly interested in the role non-state actors have come to play in public diplomacy, reproducing, but also contesting and disrupting the state's strategic communications. She's currently focusing on diasporas and emotions, exploring the opportunities as well as the consequences of their transnational existence for public diplomacy as 2022-2024 Research Fellow of the USC Center on Public Diplomacy. Alina, you're welcome to share with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So in thinking, so after receiving the invitation from Viorica, I thought, okay, what would be most useful from, from my work and my own research, but also my background. Yes, I'm an academic, but I have worked as a PR practitioner for 10 years in Romania before turning an academic in the UK and doing research within diaspora communities. So I think what I can contribute, to this discussion is some insights about bottom-up, but also, top-down approaches to fighting misinformation, disinformation, and fake news. And I structured, my points along four main arguments. So the first one is that all these 4 points obviously contribute to spread of fake news, right? So the first one is very much about the structural conditions, right? The fragmentation of the communication ecosystem. The second one is around the emotions that have come to play a huge role in misinformation, disinformation, and the spread of fake news. The third one is very much a specific Romanian aspect, and that's the endemic lack of trust in existing in Romanian society between each other. So there is very, very little trust between us as members of society. And ultimately, my last point, it's around the disappearance of the spokesperson function, if we think, again, what a top-down approach. So these are the points that I'll be talking about briefly, and then I'll connect them at the end. So the structural conditions, right, with the fragmentation of the communication ecosystem means that what we are basically seeing is an overrepresentation of polarized voices. And what they basically contribute to is a loss of trust. So we're distrusting, or we're losing our trust in established media institutions and so on. And to the point that we don't know who to trust anymore. And that's obviously a tension that is explored by those who, are strategically planting or wanting to strategically emphasize disinformation efforts. An aspect that is less talked about, though, is the one of emotions and how they can, what part they play ultimately. Because in this very fragmented media reality and environment, it is almost like a game. It is the algorithms that make it easy for fake news to propagate and to intensify. We see very much, very easily, right? We see lots of AI generated images, videos. They are funny. They are mocking sometimes known politicians, known heads of states. So they trigger a reaction. They are playing with our emotions. They're triggering a reaction. They make us laugh. But what they are ultimately doing is they erode, they contribute to our distrust in these politicians, in heads of states, in those who are leading us, right? So in political leadership, so to speak. At the same time, the same AI-generated videos, images, the memes, they also play with our fears, our anxieties, and the trauma of past experiences, and obviously bordering Ukraine with the war happening. We've seen firsthand how the trauma of past experiences, the trauma of Soviet occupation was very much fueled by disinformation efforts here in Romania, right? The anxieties and fears of a possible extension of the war is very much explored as well, right? So this leads me back to the point I was making about the distrust in each other. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Social Values Atlas. It was a research done by Romanian sociologists. They tracked 100 years of Romania, tracing especially the social values in Romania, right? And their conclusion, which I think is very relevant to our discussion today, is that what we are witnessing in Romania is this endemic lack of trust, the lack of a culture of trust in each other that is linked to a certain dominant traditionalism that rejects differences, to the education system that has been perceived consistently as being weak or not modernized enough, as well as to the lack of certain economic safety. So all these different elements are not only tied to the communist period, because many people say, it's the aftermath of communism that has eroded our trust in each other and in institutions. But what this piece of research has done is to actually put things into a wider perspective. So these things should be traced back, or these phenomena should be traced back to the emergence of Romania as a state, as a new state, right? So these are not only things that they only been amplified during communism, but they very much existed within Romanian society for 100 years, right? And while all these are very much bottom-up approaches, right? So we're looking at how people are reacting on social media in this very fragmented media environment, while we're looking at their emotions, while we understand that it really has to do also with the lack of trust in each other, the question is, okay, what should be done? What other factors are actually contributing to it? And as someone who's been indeed focusing on research on Romanian diaspora, I especially looked at how the lack of trust in each other comes at play in diaspora communities, and how fake news and disinformation is one of the less within diaspora communities is one of the aspects that has been less discussed. Oftentimes when we talk about fighting fake news, right, or disinformation, it's about institutions and institutional efforts, or about campaigns to educate, society and to build resilience. But society is, a very large concept, and citizens, obviously, it's very difficult to educate citizens one by one, right? So we need to be looking at different groups, and we need to be looking at, especially at marginalized groups. And one such groups are obviously also within the diaspora communities. So having observed, right, for almost 10 years, right, what is happening within the different diaspora communities, and especially the ones here in the UK, I can see that one of the main issues that is contributing to the lack of trust is also the slow erosion of the public communication in Romania. And this brings me to the, top-down approaches, to my last point about the disappearance of the spokesperson institution in Romania. So I've done in 12 years ago, I think I've done a study about the institutionalization of public relations within the Romanian government. But if I redo this study now, I think the situation is dramatic. PR is no longer a strategic function. It wasn't there then either. It was very a technical, what predominated was a technical understanding of public relations. But now I think the situation is even worse. And that's why we see so many crisis communications that sometimes even start with the institutions, because we don't, or we no longer have the institution of the spokesperson in Romania. So looking ahead, what can be done, right? I think one of the things ARRP as an association should do is to advocate for the increased role of spokesperson in Romania, and to strengthen the public communication framework, so to speak. We need a better public communication ecosystem in Romania. And then obviously, if we turn to PR practitioners, there's a lot about the responsibility and ethics of PR practitioners. But there is also something of how we equip the PR practitioners to actually understand tensions in society. So I think what needs, coming back to that point that Viorica made about the education, right? My colleagues at different universities in Romania are doing an amazing job with their students who are learning, doing pitches and so on. But I think one aspect that should be even more highlighted, even more emphasized, is an understanding of the cultural aspects, understanding the tensions in Romanian culture, where they are coming from, right? Because if we want to know our audiences, including our transnational audiences, right, the diasporas, the Romanian diaspora is a third / a quarter, we don't know, statistics vary, of the Romanian population. So in the social media environment, Romanians in diaspora are very much part of, Romanian ecosystem, social media ecosystem, and they are following more. So when I do research, and I'll finish with that, when I do research, focus groups and interviews with Romanians in the UK, and I ask them, how are you following what's happening in the world? The answer is, I'm following Romanian media. only after that they're following the British media, right? So there is this very powerful connection with the motherland, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Alina. It's very interesting what you pointed out. And is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? If not, I would like to ask a question. You live, as far as I understand, a lot in the UK. So you're talking a lot with the diaspora, Romanian diaspora there. But do you feel that the kind of conclusion you've drawn for Romania also applies to the United Kingdom?
Do you mean the fragmentation and the lack of trust and these kind of aspects?
Not only that, you pinpointed as a major aspect the disappearance of the spokesperson and the consequences.
Yeah.
I mean, about that.
Okay, so first of all, the British culture is very much a culture based on trust. So I often have to talk with different representatives of British institutions, and I've collaborated with them for cultural resources, for instance, to better understand Romanians, right, in the UK. So the first thing I have to emphasize is that unlike the British culture, that's very much a culture based on trust, in Romania, trust is very much an issue historically, just because of the points that I made earlier. Now, when it comes to the spokespersons, I think we're seeing a totally different picture here in the UK, and that is a strong institution of the spokesperson. So we see that from the government. I mean, I can look and then add in the chat. The UK government does a brilliant job when it comes to the public communication and how the public communicators of the government should act, and all this is public, so it's easily Googleable, searchable, so to speak. But this doesn't mean that we don't have a rise of fake news in the UK. It doesn't mean we don't have disinformation in the UK. Yes, we have. This is happening. These are global phenomena. But it's different. The way they manifest are quite different. And although there is this culture based on trust in the UK, you'll see the same common themes that are very much tackled by disinformation spreaders and topics like immigration, right? So immigrants are the others. Immigrants are the ones that we need to be afraid of. The immigrants are the ones taking, the resources and so on. So there is lots to talk about it, yes.
Sorry to be pressing you, but I got on the chat another question for you. Could be very brief. Is there anything that you suggest ARRP could do, our association could do in the near future to approach that as an immediate measure?
So as I said, advocate for an increased role of the spokesperson. So I would really suggest, I don't know, not only open letters, so this kind of formal route to advocate and lobby for that, but maybe organizing a series of events. And as I said, I'm very happy to put in the chat. I'll look for it now and put in the chat some links from public communication of the UK government, because they might be really useful.
Thank you. Thank you, Alina.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is a lady, Yana Abadani. She is Executive Director of the Center for Independent Journalism. She is President of the board, and in 2013, she was awarded the European Citizen of the Year prize of the European Parliament. She has an experience of over 30 years in the media field, having worked as a news agency editor, a TV editor, a media developer with her Center for Independent Journalism. As a director of this center, she coordinated programs ranging from professional training for journalists to targeted assistance for media journalists, from advocacy to transparency, press freedom and protection of journalism, all the way to curricula development and strengthening the journalist associations in Romania. Really impressive. She has been active in developing the largest strategic media literacy program in Romania and is teaching media literacy classes at the University of Bucharest. Now, she served as the president of the Southeast European Network for the Professionalization of the Media and as a member of the Council of IFEX, the largest freedom of expression global organization. She has a PhD in sociology with a thesis on the impact of the digital technologies on the preservation of family memory and the Master of Arts in Applied Ethics. I'm very much looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Your microphone, please.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's very an honor for me, and I realize I have to shorten that bio. But this is it. Over the last 25 years, I've done a lot, and I've done everything I could in order to keep the media in Romania stay abreast of what's happening. What I'm going to tell you is just the same story, but look from the perspective of the journalist. So you will hear from me the same things that have already been said here. Trust, public communication, transparency, and so on and so forth. But let me tell you my perspective on things, and then I hope we will have time to discuss. Some 15 years ago, it was the distant year 2010 or around something. I visited the American Press Institute. That is an association of publishers, of media publishers. And they were very into developing something that they called disruptive innovation, something to help them break the old patterns in order to allow growth. What we see now, looking back over the last 15 years, we had our share of disruptive developments. I'm not so sure about innovation in media, but we'll get there. But for disruptive things, we have been served and then some. Compared to how media looked like 15 years ago, there are some key elements missing. The information in the form we knew it is no longer there. We have now information as text. We have now information as images, as video. We had this 15 years ago, but now we have memes, we have data visualized, we have big data to work with. We have artificial intelligence or generated AI-generated content. We have bots, we have bot farms, and we have disinformation at industrial scale. The information that used to be the privilege of journalists is no longer there, or is no longer a privilege for the professionals. Actually, the whole media system moved from information economy, so it was a media economy based on information. It moved to attention economy, and nowadays we moved, as Alina also said, on emotion economy. So people are trying to push our buttons instead of engaging our brains. the business model is no longer there. So the media cannot rely on any longer on the business model. It was so steadily developed over the last 150 years. The advertising, the money coming from advertising is not linked to audience anymore, or at least not for the media outlets. You probably know, definitely know, that most of the money from the advertising budgets is going to the big platforms. So Google and Facebook and you name it are grabbing up to 90% of the advertising budget, leaving a very, very thin margin for the media outlets per se, for the journalists producing the journalism. The money itself is no longer there. And over the last 5 years, we had the pandemics, we had the wars, and the budgets for advertising have been slashed furthermore, especially probably in the biggest countries and the biggest economy is not that visible. But in a country like Romania, 2019 brought us close to the advertising budget that we used to have before the economic crisis in 2009. And then the pandemic came, and then the war on Ukraine came, and the budgets have been diverted otherwise. The professionals are no longer there. We have the technology that makes production of content easier. And many newsrooms embrace this technology, including for economic reasons, and slashed basically their newsrooms. One typical example in this is Chicago Tribune. They decided at a certain point to sack all their photojournalists because the reporters using their mobile phones were able to take decent enough pictures to be published. And because people were no longer, people meaning the readers, were ready to accept less qualitative photo if it was delivered sooner. So the technology somehow pushed aside the need for some professions in the newsrooms, and the professionals are no longer there. In our part of the world, the political pressure also pushed the professionals away from the newsrooms. Enough is for me to say that the best journalistic pieces over the last, let's say, 5 years were produced outside the traditional newsrooms. They were produced by journalistic cooperatives or by non-profit journalistic projects. Who else is no longer there? Definitely the public is no longer there. And they are not there because they disengaged from media. And you of course have heard, if not have friends, who told you that news are stressful, news are dirty, and they decided not to follow news anymore. This is a very visible trend in Romania, and is a visible trend especially in the paradoxically in the educated groups. So people are no longer there because they decide not to engage with media anymore, but also they are no longer there because their consumption patterns change. The people are no longer buying publications or print publications. They are not waiting in front of their TV sets for the newscasts, the main newscast of the evening to start. They want the information as soon as the event happened on their mobile platform. And as you said, the trust is no longer there. We saw a very dramatic plunge of the trust in the media. We started in the mid-90s at around 86%, if I'm not mistaken. We are now barely around 40%. I'm not saying that the 80% trust in the media is healthy. At that point, we were just so enthusiastic about our freedom of expression and our newly created media that we were ready to bestow upon them our trust. And we actually credited the media to be the real opposition in the country. We are no longer there. People do not trust media, and we come back to the very low level of trust in our society in general. We don't trust the media, we don't trust the politicians, we don't trust the public administration, we don't trust anybody, and we don't trust our neighbors. It's a very low level of social trust, and this is visible in all our public life. What is there still, despite everything? What is there is the need for good journalism. And if you take a look at the audience figures of these journalistic projects, we had an example last night. It was a newly formed newsroom, like a couple of years ago, that put out a documentary about the 10 years of mandates of President Iohannis, and the audience figures are sky high. So the people are still feeling the need to get information from somewhere. But this information has to be performed in the public interest, and this is a topic that we should insist more, especially in our media literacy projects or classes or wherever we deliver this media literacy activities. I would like to stress that the building of the idea of public interest and building the trust is not a matter just for journalists, and it's not a matter just for media companies. It's a systemic problem, and the presentations up to now have made this extremely visible. It's a systemic problem, the lack of trust. In order to address it, and in order to preserve the idea of journalism, I'm not talking here about a certain platform or a certain company or a certain type or genre of journalism. I'm talking about information performed, gathered and interpreted in a public interest. In order to preserve this extremely valuable key of democracy, I was looking for a more visual term. We need wisdom, we need cooperation, and we need sound ethical conduct. By wisdom, or I define wisdom as the highest form of information. We start with data, then information with data, which is data interpreted or ordinated. It's knowledge, that is information interpreted, and above this is wisdom, that is knowledge applied. We know a lot of things. What are we doing those? So we need wisdom. There is a lot of knowledge regarding how the media is working these days. What do we do with that? We need cooperation. including empowering the public, and media literacy here is again key. And we need sound ethical conduct, because I used to say to my students, democracy is like mathematics. It depends very much on what you put into equation in order to get the right results. Otherwise, democracy can be, or the mechanisms of democracy can be faked. And what we get, we can clearly see in some countries in Europe these days. So thank you very much. This is my plea for journalism.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions, please. I was considering bringing up the topic of the age gap, because I see those who can still trust what's left of the media. There is a lot, but those are not exactly the very young generations. Are the generations that's at least my perception. Those that got used to the use of media. The younger generations are so much more vulnerable, and they're so ready to just take the 15-second TikTok as gospel truth. On the other hand, I keep
Gabriel,
remember...
I have bad news for you.
Okay, please do.
Which are good news for our societies. The kids are interested in media. They are not interested in our media, and this is our problem. They are not watching TV because there is nothing on TV to serve their purposes. If we are able to deliver our liberal democracy messages via TikTok, we win. They are desperately looking for leadership. Have you heard about a publication that is called GEN?
No.
No.
Well, that's the problem. We have GEN is an initiative, is a journalism initiative conducted by teenagers, and it's coming for those who are not Romanian speakers. GEN is the equivalent of like, and it's a automatic expression in the conversation of young people. They are talking whatever, and from time to time they add this parasite phrase like this and this, and the name is used in an ironic way, but they are delivering news, including political news, on TikTok or in Instagram. So the kids are interested in news, but not on our platforms. And this is our problem. We don't look in the right places.
I'm very happy that I provoked you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
I'm easily provocable on this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I get one more question here on the chat. What are the challenges faced by independent journalism?
Let's define independent journalism. We define independent journalism as the journalism that is decided by the journalist. The topics are decided by the journalist. The focus is decided by the journalist. The way of presentation is decided by the journalist. In the big corporations, this is no longer possible. Romania had a very, I would say specific, but the mechanism was more or less to be found in Hungary and probably in Poland. where political parties have supported media with funds. In our case, it was funds coming from the budget for the general work of the political parties, and they decided to invest this public money in communication activities, and actually they invested more than 20 million euros in the Romanian media outlets, or some of them. For Romania, this is a huge part of the budget. So this is why I'm saying that it's quite difficult to do independent journalism in a big company that receives money from the party, from whatever party, doesn't matter. All of them are doing the same, actually. And this is why the best journalists left the companies and created these small cooperatives, or newsrooms that are working on a non-profit base, or these journalistic projects, actually. For them, it's very difficult, not only because they have to find their resources, and this is where the PR people may be extremely, extremely helpful, explaining to their companies why it is important to invest in journalism, not in media, in journalism. And another very complicated problem is for them to move from their position as journalists into the position of project managers. They have to learn how to fundraise. They have to learn how to prepare a financial report. They have to learn how to transform their work into KPIs, indicators, and things like this. For them, it's a professional transformation, and some of them are frustrating to do it. You know, I know how to cover corruption. Why do you ask me to present you all the receipts I have in your project? Because if you ask transparency from the government, you have to be ready to provide the same transparency for the money you receive. But as I said, it's a double challenge. First of all, they have to survive, and secondly, they have to do a job they are not prepared for, and they are not particularly liked, meaning administration of projects.
Thank you very much, Jana Vadani. And now we shall go on to the next speaker. Again, a lady is Christina Forsgaard, Eco-Ethics Chair. As part of a drive for continuous improvement of ethical standards in PR globally, ECO has named Christina, founder of NetProfile, an ethics chair. She assumes the role of head of ECO's annual Power of Ethics campaign. The move comes as part of an ECO strategy to work with other sectors to focus on educating the public, businesses, and PR professionals in regard to identifying and combating misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, while aiding the identification of reliable information and trusted sources. You're welcome.
Thank you. Do you have my presentation there, or should I? Okay. Yes. Okay. Shall I just say next when you move on to the next one? Does that work? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me here, and so pleased that we can talk about ethical issues, because the law is always behind what is happening. The pace is just dramatic. And I was so pleased to hear every one of you talk about the situation, especially in Romania, but the state of democracy. I think our unanimous concern is about defending democracy, the rights of the people. And like Iona, you said, people probably don't really understand democracy, and you talk about the math, that what you have to put in something, and that is a key element. We all have to put in something. Otherwise, we will not have a democracy. Democracy is what we make out of it. So it is highly important that we as PR professionals understand our role in this equation. It's not mathematics, but it is definitely an equation. And I think the first thing to realize here is that I always ask, do you think we have power? And yes, that is our business. Our business is to influence. Our profession is all about influencing the public. So we are a dramatic force for good. We can be a very dramatic force for good. And we can, if we use our powers professionally and ethically, we can decide what people think and actually do. Of course, in the hands of a bad regime or autocracy, PR tactics and strategies become poison. But working with the civil society and the brands and people, we are part of making good. So our clients, they do turn to us because we have the understanding, skills, and tools to influence. And of course, the tools are now so huge with AI as well. But because we have these I call these magical powers, we truly have magical powers. We have to influence and exercise our powers ethically. And one of the key things that we have to think today is, who do we serve? Who do we say no to? And if there is unethical money and influence, are we working for those causes that actually undermine everything? Next, please. Yeah, everyone knows this is from a Spider-Man movie, and always happy to bring on some superpowers alongside our superpowers. But in Spider-Man movie, there's this Uncle Ben who says to the Spider-Man, this young teenager who has magically gotten these magical powers and is not understanding that his powers are quite crucial, and he is doing a lot of harm with the powers. But then Uncle Ben says, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think this is, if we hold on to this thought, that with our power, we are able to maybe save democracy, because I think that democracy is now in decline, because one of the hallmarks, like Joanna so nicely put, journalism can only exist in a democracy. And we can only exist in democracy. So we don't exist if we lose democracy. That's why we actually have to start thinking that we exercise our power for democracy, for those values that we hold so dearly. Next. There has been the talks quite a long time ago, even before the pandemic, everyone was talking about the rise of the ethical economy. So we were talking about corporate social responsibility. We have codes of conduct. We have DEI programs. We have ESG. We were talking about purpose. Every company needs to have a purpose besides selling more stuff. And we were talking about activist CEOs or spokespersons who actually inspire us and show us the way to go. Yes, those are all true. But if we look at where we have gone after the pandemic, I think we are now more and more focused on just trying to survive. And that's because the pandemic left us very vulnerable to all kinds of things, conspiracy theories. Everyone was very alone with their ideas. It was very, very easy to create these echo chambers. And also because the war. Russian attack on Ukraine is really taking a toll on us all. And all of this is eroding the whole ecosystem that is where we actually want to flourish and do our business. Next. And also, if you look at what we have been able to see in the legislative side, we have a lot of ethical governance, EU whistleblower directive, corporate sustainability reporting directive, ethical business in many multiple levels, ethical technology, multiple levels, ethical AI from Council of Europe and EU AI Act, and also the Digital Service Act. So yes, there's a lot of on the legislative side that is calling for transparency, because we don't want to see oligarchs or corporate money being stashed somewhere and having its own say of how things need to be run. But still, we are very vulnerable due to the reasons that have been explained quite thoroughly already, because the hallmarks of democracy and freedom of speech have been eroding. The public is not there, the young people are not there anymore, the journalists are not there, PR people might be turning the blind eye. Next. What we now see, and this is really crucial to understand, that AI is now turning information and the narratives that are the lifeline of how we see the world and how we understand the history and how we understand the current affairs and maybe the future. So yes, AI can turn this into global medicine, because yes, we learn about new things very quickly. Entertainment, yes, we can be entertained 24/7, 365, but it can also turn, the platforms can turn information into a weapon. And that is what we now see. There's a kind of a evolution of communications technology here. And if we look at the last one, the cognitive warfare, that's when TikToks and Instagrams and everyone comes in. The algorithms behind those platforms are not benign. They are hostile. And we do not understand yet why this is so dramatic to us, because a lot of us here, we are grown-ups, but a lot of us don't understand that the younger generation is now growing up with these hostile narratives, and their worldview is completely different. But it's also the digital dope is actually changing their brain chemistry. And this is serious, and we don't understand it. And why ethical things in PR matter here is we really have to think, are we fueling the beast? If a lot of people say that you need to be in TikTok in order to reach the audiences, but at the same time, you are putting money in TikTok, and TikTok is now not very healthy for kids. So I think ethical issues are now here plain sight, and we have to start thinking, how do we manage this beast, which can do good, but it can also turn our young people into let's say people who have a very short fuse, because it's changing the neurological system in their brain as well. Next. So yes, if you look at the whole thing now, I think that one of the key issues that we don't understand yet is that mental health is a pandemic. It's currently a pandemic, and it is not only the young people, but also older people are looking at the mental health problems. But the mental health problems are, of course, fueled also by digital platforms because because of the information and the way that they are structured, and all the biases and echo chambers and the emotional triggers and behavioral triggers and the polarization, those are all affecting our mental health, and also making us more reluctant to use our critical thinking, because it's much more easier to be in a bubble, and it's also very much more easier to believe in something than change your mind when new information is coming. And people are also very tired of news as well. So there's there's a huge amount of people who are signing up from daily news, because it's just too much. You can just look at the history, or just start believing in something much more easier. So yes, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a market for disinformation. There's a lot of hate speech. We are looking at InfoWar, and also that is fueled also by cyber attacks. So we can talk about the hybrid attacks against democracy, which is coming outside of democracy, of course, but democracies with freedom of speech, we do it to ourselves as well. So cognitive warfare is definitely something that we need to be looking at, and we cannot sleepwalk into this situation. That's why PR, journalists, academia, all of us need to start looking at the bigger picture and understand that this is really eroding our common future and our societies the way that we know them and want them to be. Next. And I already said, I think AI has been there in the works and is growing very fast. Now we are not only looking at the large language models, we're also looking at the large behavioral models. So AI is able to track not only what we think, but what we're going to do next. So our behaviors are becoming something that they play with. Not only what we know, what we feel, but how we act. And AI will absolutely be a tool for everyone, for those malicious actors to also predict what is my next move based on what I have done before. So this is the time when we all have to step up our game, because strategic ignorance, that's turning the blind eye and say that, okay, yeah, that doesn't concern us. It does concern us. And I think we have to start thinking, have to do some soul searching. Is it really okay to fuel the beast? And when are we fueling the beast? I think we need to just start asking, because I cannot just there's a lot of people ask me, should I not use TikTok? And I said, I cannot tell you, I cannot say no or yes, but you have to think and you have to be aware, because you decide. We are all here deciding what we want from the future. Next. In Warsaw last year, we ratified the Warsaw Principles for Ethical Use of AI in PR. And yes, the list is there. I'm not going to go through it, but I like to talk about some of the things in there. And I think one that I would like to pick up now is the human oversight, intervention, and collaboration, because we really need to collaborate and also make sure that we understand how we use it and we collaborate. And like Patrick Pennick said, AI is also a tool for us to use for good and to use to battle this battle. It's not like AI, we're fighting AI. We can fight with AI, and fighting with AI is much more interesting. I think it requires collaboration with us too. If we come together and start using these tools collaboratively for good, we will definitely make an impact on democracy and human rights and rule of law in the world that we want to live in. Next. So just a list, this is my basically last one. Our ethical judgment is constantly challenged in our client work. So these are some of the questions that we need to start asking. What kind of clients should we not work for? And also means project. What kind of project we should not work for? What transparency actually means to us? What are ethically questionable campaigns and why? Freedom of the press. I think we need to start doing PR for journalism and for the press because it is so fundamental for us as well. And how do we use these tools ethically? Because that is a huge question, a huge one. And there are no right or wrong answers yet, because so many tools are so different and have different consequences. Next. Our currency and democracy's currency is trust, and everyone has been talking about the trust, eroding trust. If we lose trust, we lose basically humanity and human rights and civil society. So I think it's very important that we take this seriously and really start acting, not just talking. And we have to be very, very brutally honest with ourselves, because when sometimes Friday, a colleague of mine sent me a message, Christina, I think there's something ethically not correct here. And I said, I think you're right. I didn't even watch or read what it was, because I said, if you stop and think and you feel like there's something is not okay, something is not okay. That's your heart telling you something that we all need to listen to. Thank you.
A lot of food for thought here.
Well, I hope so. One more thing, The Power of Trust is a book that we have, I think, 52 or 53 contributors, and Maxim Behar and I put together from a very, very vast majority, big PR professionals from different parts of the world contributing to the book. So that will be in the works, and that will be a good Christmas present. Hopefully to everyone. So that is in the works. So we'll let you know when that is coming up.
And I don't see questions, and I don't think is that there are no questions. I think that we're thinking very hard.
We have a question for Christina.
Okay.
I think we have one. Companies want strong visibility, but clickbait headlines from high-tech media can destroy their message. How can PR teams handle this risk while protecting the brand's integrity?
And I should add, with the line between PR, marketing, and advertising growing thinner and thinner.
Yes, I think this is a challenge that we also have to tackle somehow. But of course, we cannot, if the journalists are not doing their work, because their work is fighting for journalism, right? If we want the marketing part, we buy the advertising space. But the PR side, I think we have to educate our clients to understand that PR side is earned, and it is not what you say, but it is what the others think you said and wants to pass forward. So yes, media training is very, very important, but I think it's in decline because the media is in decline as well, and this is going to be very, very difficult in the future as well, because everyone thinks that they have everything is the extension of their own self-promotion and marketing, and journalism is something that is not valued. But at the same time, having said this, I think I'm an optimist, and I think that in this quest of really holding the truth component here, there will be some journalists who prevail this era, because they earn our trust, and they are the beacons for truth and the journalism that we need as citizens of democracy. So, but also we have to be on that side as well, and we need to be trusted.
Thank you very much, Christina. And
You're welcome.
now I'll switch on to Andras Stanislav. We've met several years ago. We haven't seen each other since. He is a former journalist, so the topic in a way continues with him. But he is today a chartered PR practitioner, a certified CMS agency auditor, and recognized by the Pro.PR award. He has served voluntary roles for the CIPR, ECO, and is president of the Hungarian PR Association. He began his career as a journalist before moving into PR and communications, spending most of his time as an independent strategic communications consultant. Over the last 20 years, he has advised governments, corporations, startups, and non-for-profit organizations on multiple countries. Andras, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I think my bio is too long as well. So like with some of us working many decades in the industry. So thanks very much for the opportunity, and thanks very much for inviting us more ICCO speakers into this panel and into this conversation. I start with a side note apart from my presentation, which is basically a reflection to the spokesperson issue. The Hungarian PR Association has helped celebrating the Hungarian Spokesperson Association of its 20th anniversary. So at least some good news that in Hungary a spokesperson association still exists, although the flip side of it that they ask for help. So they still see the same challenge as we just described. But anyway, back to my presentation, and thanks for the support for the tech with the presentation, because it's shared from ARRP's computer. So I'll start with the general presentation about ICCO and our role in responsibility. Role and responsibility in dealing with global challenges, because we try to define ourselves as a global voice of the PR industry, which means that we are not just doing work, but also taking the responsibility of how the PR and communication influences and impacts the future. So if we can move on to the next slide. A couple of years ago, with the support of the Council of Europe, we've outlined some of the challenges to society from our perspective, the modern communication challenges for society. So that's available to download. The three major issues which we outlined was the freedom of speech and the freedom of media, the media literacy, and an AI and digital media ethics. So we are still working with the Council of Europe through two of our working groups, the ethics group and the Misinfo, Disinfo working group. And you've already heard a couple of presentations, and Massimo is going to talk about the Misinfo and Disinfo group just right after me, who is leading the group, but also the president-elect of ICCO. On the next slide, I've added just two more challenges, because I think it's very crucial that we also follow the pace of the global trends. And Patrick and other speakers have talked about the geopolitical challenges. Obviously, this is the year of election, or this was the year of election, but also, unfortunately, a couple of battlefields like the Middle East, like Ukraine, is still undergoing, and the false information, fake information, mis and disinformation has also a huge role. But also the climate challenge and the climate emergency. I think since the climate is changing more rapidly, it's also a huge challenge. And since the webinar, other presentations have covered lots of other things, my duty now is to talk about the climate challenge and how we tackle this. And now the next slide, I've outlined, this is a very personal note, but I've outlined 4 layers of responsibility of a PR professional towards the climate change. And the first level is the individual level, because we are individuals, so we also have to walk the talk. Whenever we talk about sustainability, it's always the question that, do you walk the talk? Do you live sustainable? Do you consider sustainability or climate change challenges when you decide about the energy usage, the travel, the food you eat? So I think it's also crucial. I mean, it's very crucial for us to understand that this is the first level of responsibility. The second level is that we are business leaders, managing companies and organizations from 2 to 200 people. And the way we operate the business, the way we encourage our colleagues, the way we manage the expectations of the young talents, because they are more sensitive about the climate change issues, that's also our responsibility. And if we move up on the ladder, the next level is that we are PR professionals. We help manage the reputation of organizations. So for example, for 4 years, I was head of comms for a campaign encouraging young climate experts in 8 European countries. to become climate ambassadors and expand their potential impact with the support of gamification tools and communication. That was when I felt that as being a PR professional, I could also do something as a responsible step for the industry for the climate change. And at the fourth level, the ones who work or volunteer for any PR association or any organization beyond their companies, we as an industry body, we also have the responsibility, but also the opportunity to share the knowledge, the best practices, to participate or even lead advocacy work or take part in industry-wide collaboration, which we do with other industry associations, but that's also what we've done with the UNDP, which I'm going to talk about in a bit more details. So I think the UNDP collaboration, the ICCO UNDP collaboration, has just stepped into the role of level 3 and level 4, because we acted as a global comms agency, but also as a consultancy to bring the strategic approach and the responsibility of the industry of PR to the table. So on the next slide, I will just outline a couple of ways how we collaborated with UNDP on this campaign. So there was a creative agency, Activista. They came up with the idea of the Weather Kids campaign, which was basically kids hijacking the weather forecast in the evening news in certain countries. And then ICCO was invited to provide PR and media relations at the beginning. But throughout the 4 or 5 months of the campaign, it turned out to be, that our work was way much more than just providing PR and media relations. We set up a climate communication task force to discuss issues around the activation, but also around the multiple stakeholders. So it has become more like a council and the counseling job rather than the PR agency capacity. And while the UN has worked with the Met offices and the local representatives of the UNDP offices in different countries, we also, ICCO and the CCT has also divided into two. We started to work with activation partners in multiple countries for the local PR support and earned media coverage. But at the same time, with the support of AMAC, we also focused on the measurement at the council level, but also at the implementation level, so that we could turn back to our clients, so to say, UNDP, about the results of the campaign and the impacts of the campaign, which I think we showcased that, I mean, with this campaign, that the PR is way more than media relations and pitching journalists, because we can provide strategic counsel, and that's also our responsibility. On the next slide, I've outlined some of the activities which we actually, and some of the values which we actually brought to this campaign. First of all, we talked about different stakeholders. So while we were invited to be responsible for earned media, but apart from journalists, we talked about NGOs, how the broader public, how tech industry, and how different stakeholders would appreciate this campaign. The second one is that creative agencies and creative campaigns, most of the time or sometimes, they focus on output only. So what was the campaign, and on the very day the campaign has happened? It's crucial, it's important, but also with the support of AMAC, we showcase that the impact, how can we measure the awareness raising? How many people signed the petition? How many people change their habit? The building the reputation of the UN itself is also key to consider when even planning any communication activities. The next one is, I'm highlighting 2 examples where I think our work has become a crisis communication preparation as well. And the first one was regarding the use of AI, because obviously we used AI with the support of translation, because we outlined a campaign in 80+ countries all across the globe. But there was a company who offered free support for the production of the campaign to use the deepfake technology, that the UNDP should only record one child doing the weather forecast, and they could use the language, the translations, and the AI technology to decrease the CO2 emission of any kind of production, because with only one recording, they could use it in multiple countries. But then we came in with a couple of concerns about the threat of credibility, of being accused of fake news or using deepfakes, for a campaign with even a good purpose. So UNDP basically chose not to use this and not to go ahead with this technology. The second one, the second crisis comms prep, I would say, is the Cannes Lions activation, because we have done a lot, but we said that if we push too hard, the creativity too hard, the threat is that we might be accused of greenwashing. And all these issues were consulted and discussed throughout the work with the CCT, and they were all taken into consideration. Also, the UNDP has very, very high profile copywriting capabilities, but with the support of PR professionals, we gave valuable insights in terms of the narratives, the fine-tuning the messages, the approach of the different stakeholders, the positioning, and what to emphasize and what not to emphasize. And last but not least, which I think is also a responsibility of the PR industry, that we basically put together over 20 different skills, not just people, different skills to this climate communication task force. Measurement capacity, crisis comms capacity, different types of media relations, the knowledge of different markets, obviously. So we activated over 45, 50 people in 80 countries for earned media coverage, and also outlined the activities of this campaign. So on the next slide, I just quickly summed up of, I think, what is key. What was the value of PR in this campaign, and in a broader sense, the responsibility and the opportunity for PR industry for the climate emergency, is that obviously we all worked with this campaign, felt, okay, yes, it was a very great idea. It was a very creative story. Since the UNDP has won multiple awards in Cannes, as well as in other countries. The next week is going to be the ICCO Global Awards campaign. So fingers crossed that they're winning again, or this campaign wins again. But in the meantime, we also felt the responsibility of our industry and how we can bring value to the table when we talk about climate emergency communication, in terms of the responsibility implementation of such a great idea, and also to think about the impact and not just the outputs of the campaign. So this was the quick sum up of how ICCO has participated in this climate change and climate emergency campaign. And I'm very open for questions if you have, either for now or for at a later stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Andras.
Thank you, Andras. Please, Ulrika. Now I see why you said your bio was too long compared to what you had to say, but it's not the number of words; it's the quality of the output, and I do appreciate that. Are there any questions? Yes. In situations where fake news directly impact an organization, what role should play the PR professionals in balancing damage control with promoting transparency and accountability to the public?
Sorry, it's a tricky one because I keep receiving direct messages as well at the same time. So I try to repeat, read the question. Whether fake news directly impacts the organization, what role should play? I mean, I think the biggest added value, I think ICCO and all the communication and PR professionals brought to this campaign, and it was quite a tricky situation. We didn't work with a corporation, we didn't work with a company, we worked with a not-for-profit organization. But even as UNDP is considered a non-profit organization focusing on, our next, our future, our more sustainable future, there were still lots of issues during this campaign with the best purpose I can imagine, where fake news issues, crisis communication preparation. So in overall, the managing the different stakeholders, managing the approach, managing how it will be perceived by the different stakeholders was a key role for ICCO. And I think that was at the end of the campaign, when we did our debrief, it was the same issue that ICCO, the UNDP has really appreciated our council support, rather than just being the PR agency for them and providing coverage in multiple countries. So I think obviously transparency is a key issue, But I think it's very, very important to walk on a very thin line of understanding the different stakeholders and the impact of all communication activity which we do, and how our actions, as Christina has also emphasized, how our actions will influence the actions and the perception of those stakeholders towards our brands. So I think that as we discussed from multiple perspectives, the responsibility of the PR industry is not only for information going out from our organizations, but also to understand what's going around us and how we can feed that back into all campaigns and all activities which we do, with the responsibility of ethical standards as well as transparency standards, and also the potential impact of our activities towards all of our stakeholders.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the speech. Thank you for the answer. And again, let's thank the last speaker, definitely not the least one, Massimo Morricone, who is, excuse me, a little. So Massimo is CEO of Omnicom Public Relations Group Italy, the group that contains Fleischmann Hillard, Ketchum, Porter Novelli. He's a communications and public affairs specialist with solid background in different industries, including governments, pharma, healthcare, food and beverages, FMCGs, automotive, and transport energy. So there is a lot of background here. He's been representing since 2015 the Italian PR and communication industry in the board of management of ICO. And ICO is the voice of public relations consultancies around the world. In November 2020, Massimo was elected European president of the organization, and in September 2024, he was appointed global vice president. Part of his ICO work includes programs to prevent misinformation, and disinformation around sustainability and human health-related topics. Thank you for your participation. The floor is yours, Massimo.
Thank you, Gabi. Thank you all. It's a privilege to be with you today. I will be sharing some of the work done by ICCO on Misinfo Disinfo. So let me go back to 2021. We were in full pandemic, closed in our apartments, and as communication professionals, myself with a bunch of colleagues, we were trying to figure out what we could do for the scenario we were living in. And in that moment, we realized we could do something. And something was about trying to give our contribution to, let's say, fight back the infodemic and disinformation around COVID, around vaccinations, etc., etc. So, long story short, we succeeded in supporting pro bono EMA, the European Medicines Agencies, in the communication around the virus and the vaccination. This effort gave us the chance to deepen, let's say, our efforts on disinformation and misinformation. And in 2022, as Andras mentioned, we created the first white paper of our industry, Modern Communication Challenges for Communicators, and the fight to misinfo, disinfo was one of the 3 key points. In 2023, the disinformation group made a step up. We, as ICCO, partnered with the Council of Europe and the Trust Project to create the Media Information and Education Pledge. So, a few things about the Trust Project first. The Trust Project is an American NGO. They certify quality journalism around 8 trust indicators. With regards to the pledge is an effort willing to unify different stakeholders of the information society, so institutions, PR and comms professionals, fact checkers, social media platforms, and of course journalists, to share, to acknowledge the shared responsibility in the fight against disinformation, and try to identify together what kind of resources, tools, best practices we can put on the table and share with our colleagues and then the general public to help win this uphill challenge. So the work has been successful. In the first year, we started, therefore, with the 3 founding members, ICCO, Council of Europe, and the Trust Project. And after 12 months, we doubled the number of organizations supporting the initiatives. We can now count on the European Association of Communication Directors, Global Women in PR, and EUPRERA, which is basically the association of research and academics in the PR field, belonging therefore to the university arena. Before this meeting, I was in another one with EUPRERA, and this is the 4th milestone on our journey against disinformation. Because with EUPRERA, we are supporting these initiatives, which is willing to educate the younger audiences around what we can do to win this battle. And in this call, I was giving a brief around the pledge, and I am very interested in understanding the opinions coming from our students. But let's go back to disinformation. So we started in 2021. In January 2024, the World Economic Forum, as you know, ranked disinformation for 2024 and 2025 as threat number 1 globally, because of the impacts it can have on all the electoral processes that are ongoing in these 2 years, with the 2024 being the year where more than 50% of voters globally went to express their opinion on this or that politician. The work we are doing is now focusing on providing some very practical, let's say, guidelines, which could be shared with our, let's say, first of all, our people of our industry, stakeholders of the whole information society, and the general public. Let me mention, let's say, the 5 key areas where we are directing our hearts and our minds. First of all, the need to work on media literacy, trying to make people understand the difference between paid versus earned, but also give them a bit of classification around the media and the news they are consuming. Was this article written by a journalist that is specialized on the topic, who is financing this specific news media outlet? Is this topic very well explained and open to debate on the media you are looking at? Basically, we see on this field existing, let's say, tools like the 8 trust indicators from the Trust Project as something that people could leverage on to develop their own critical views around the media they are consuming. And then, again, the difference between paywall and subscription. we are now facing an era where we are creating a two-layer information society when it goes to news. The one which decides to go through a media subscription to be informed and read, for example, comments coming from key journalists, and other people that decide not to do it. The difference is that if the second group relies only on clickbaits and conversation on media, perhaps we will have two levels of, let's say, of information consumed and a higher chance to create polarization around specific topics. So this first point, media literacy, crucial. The second one is around transparency of digital platforms. And on this, for example, we could target the bias of the algorithm and moderation policies, which can often give a sense of the potential bubble you might end up being in if the algorithm is always giving you one opinion about one thing, so a specific kind of content, and that if there are no moderation policies or full moderation policies, so there is no freedom to express a qualified opinion on a specific topic. The third one is around international collaboration, and this is exactly what our pledge is about, is putting together professionals and organizations belonging to different disciplines of the information society, where PR, in my view, can have a central role because we are in the middle, of a circle that includes our clients, social platforms, institutions, of course, media and journalism sphere, fact checkers. And so this kind of international cooperation can give us the chance to share, of course, standards, ethics, best cases, for example, when it goes on media literacy campaign and so forth. The fourth one is around supporting independent media. And in the beginning of this conversation, we said, what do we mean about independent media, which is a great question. Just to give you a number, last year in 2023 in the US, we saw more than 1,000 local independent media disappearing. And this is happening to a certain extent also in Europe, which means there is a higher chance to have our information landscape losing quality and power. And with this regards, I think the chance to, let's say, partners, for example, with the fact-checking networks like ICCO is doing on quite a few initiatives is crucial, because we could tell our people that, for example, going back to the media literacy, if you want to have your opinion after having read an article or a title based on clickbait, and you have no chance to understand more from the specific company which is involved in the article, you can also rely, for example, on sources like fact-checking entities. And then there is the fifth one, which is around technologies and AI, which can help us to find, prevent, eradicate fake contents or manipulated contents. And here, let's say, initiatives have been growing in the last 12 months. Let me mention a few. Of course, well, there is community notes from X, which is becoming more and more controversial, as we know. TikTok started automatical label AI-generated contents, and also worked on quite a few disinformation topics regarding healthcare with the World Health Organization lately. On automatically labeled contents, also Meta is doing progress, but I want to mention explicitly the Content Authenticity Initiative, which is the broader globally, is a US-based initiative, and to make it simple, is basically trying to create for any, let's say, information content, an ID, which can allow you to understand if this is the original content, if this content is taking pieces from other contents, if the image has been manipulated, if the content has been changed, and so forth. So having the chance to understand what kind of tools are available, I think it's an important step for us, for our industry. Also, on account of a survey we made this year in April that showed that 82% of PR and comms professionals, when they think of a specific AI tool helping them to detect misinfo, disinfo, they say, I have no answer. I know that something is happening on social media. I know that something is happening outside there, but nothing comes to my mind. So I think overall, the picture I want to give is that there is a lot of job to do, but if we approach this challenge as a whole, not as a PR industry, but as good forces belonging to the whole information society, there is more chances to create critical thinking, to create awareness around useful tools, and to do together concrete actions that can allow us, but also future generation, to have a different, perhaps, approach to media scrutiny. So thank you so much. And my final message is, anyone who is interested in understanding more about the pledge, about how you can give your contribution to the working group, let us know, and we can talk with pleasure.
Massimo, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And there is at least one question coming your way. Is there any practical way that PR professionals can promote ethical standards to improve media literacy for both the public and corporations that you see?
Absolutely. I think here the responsibility and the opportunity is for national associations. We know that 50% of national of our members, so national PR and comms consultancies associations, are taking initiatives on media literacy. These initiatives are part also of the training we can provide to people entering our industry. I see the chances to learn a lot from what our members are doing locally, and then to bring the best practice to the international level. Again, there is no one solution, but if we approach the fight as a coalition of connected disciplines, we have the higher chances to try to win it.
Thank you very much, Massimo. Your presentation received the most important number of questions, so it was extremely interesting. Thank you very much for your presence here. Thank you all, and especially ICO experts for your valuable information and insights, for documents you shared today with us. for guidelines, etc., etc. I promise that we, as a Romanian association, will try to transpose them into concrete actions to help our community here in Romania. Let me say that the core ideas from your presentation will be disseminated through our newsletter to all ARRP members and subscribers, ensuring that your expertise reaches a wider audience. We pick up a lot of takeaways from today's your presentation. First will be that the media literacy is extremely important to grow resilience against fake news, so it is better to prevent that to combat. Second, we should try to understand the audiences and to understand the cultural aspects and to advocate for a PR spokesperson role in communication process. An interesting perspective was to bring media information on newest platform like TikTok. Also, rather than fighting against artificial intelligence, we should work with it to achieve positive impact and protect democratic values and the integrity of public discourse. And we are in the business of influencing the public. We can be a dramatic force of good if we use our power in a good way. So thank you very much, and I hope that following this conference, we are all aligned with ethical principles upheld by the European Commission, European Council, by ICCO, and we must remain committed to promoting and providing accurate and responsible information to our clients and to the public. Thank you once again to all speakers and to all participants. It's been a pleasure to host this conference with you. And Gabi, if you have a final point, please.
Oh, my final point is exactly what you said. Thank you all for taking part in this, and looking forward to meeting you in our next meeting, in our next event.
Thank you all. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Be awesome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.